Hey everyone. Yeah, we're back in the car again. Why are we not when are we not in the car? Unfortunately, it's not summertime, it's fall time, and as much as I would love to do a lot of this stuff with a fall setting, we are just in the middle of a rain weekend. So, yeah, I got to stay around here half the time. So, we're going to actually do something that may take longer than most of my videos, but I'm actually going to share with you a full pitch of a film that I've always wanted to do. The Gremlins films are not my favorite films, but they are films that I particularly love. I love the book and record set that I had as a kid. I saw the original film when I was in the hospital getting foot surgery, and I was probably about seven. I want to say I was 7 or 6 or 7 around the time I saw it for the first time. I loved it. It was always like a fun time. The sequel I actually got to see at my local drive-in theater, which is still around, and it goes down as like one of my favorite childhood cinema memories. Uh, but I've always wanted. Let me tip this a little bit so I can. Eh, I'm gonna have a big chin in these regardless. Uh, but I always have humored the idea of a Gremlins 3. I know that so many people have talked about it since the second one came out, even though the second one technically wasn't successful. Apparently, there was going to be an animated series uh, with Gremlins 2, but unfortunately, it didn't become a hit, so the series never got made. Um, but I think everyone's had their ideas for a Gremlins 3 script, and I actually thought about doing this early on when I was originally doing vlogs to tell this story. But I always kind of put in my mind, just say that's the dream project. If I ever get a chance to write or direct a movie, I would love it for it to be a Gremlins movie. Just because Joe Dante's my favorite director. Although surprisingly enough, Gremlins is not my favorite film of his. So uh, it's just one of those interesting ideas. But I thought I would talk about the entire pitch of the film, uh, mainly because due to the death of Dick Miller. Uh, whether or not if they ever do a Gremlins movie again, if it'll be a reboot or a sequel. I think mostly they want to do a reboot. I think some people are saying there's a Gremlins 3 being made now. I'll believe it when I see trailers or see actual proof. I think half of that is just talk, which it has been for a long time. Uh, so anyway, my Gremlins 3 will never happen. So uh, this is pretty much the pitch I would have gone. It would have opened actually during an aerial dogfight, like a World War II dogfight. Uh, you think it's American forces, and then you realize it's Chinese fighters. Um, but we would have had a gremlin quote unquote sabotage. Going back to the original idea of how gremlins were set about was due to World War II planes messing up, and everyone was saying there's gremlins in them. So I thought that would be like a good way to open it up. Echo where Gizmo came from. Echo the old man as a younger man. I thought it would be a cool idea to get the guy who played Short Round from Indiana Jones and Data from the Goonies to play the younger version of Mr. Wing. Because I thought it would be like a cool Spielberg tribute. Uh, and he hasn't acted in a long time, but he does stunt coordinating and stuff like that. I just thought it would be a fun idea. Then we see him how he discovers Gizmo in the wreckage of his plane, and then it suddenly shoots forward like 80 years to well, not 80 years quite. We're not at 80 years yet. What is it? 60 years probably by the time I was writing that. Um, we set up on going into the new town, which is Clamp Corners, which is talked about at the end of Gremlins 2. It's pretty much a Kingston Falls style town, except I had the idea of every now and again billboards would suddenly pop up pop-ups on a computer, and it's similar to the way they did it in Minority Report, and we kind of have similar things with that right now, although it's not like the retinal scans were it's dedicated to you. We got stuff like that with spam on our emails and stuff like that. Uh, but there's stuff in real life that's kind of like that, but I kind of wanted to make that comment on, like, as much as this is like a small town life, it's the corporate version of small town life. So we get introduced again to Billy and Kate, and I always had it written out that they were only going to appear during this section and at the end, because I could not buy that Billy could be involved with like a third plot-wise involving Gremlins, because after that he's just going to look completely stupid, and so will Kate. So it's them dealing with their son, who's 16, their son Randy, who was going to be the main focus, and just a complete opposite issue with, like, where Billy is more like subdued, more artistic and stuff like that. Randy's more outgoing, even though he still can't talk to the girl next door. He's more outgoing, more rebellious against his parents and stuff like that. And Billy can't trust him with responsibility. It's almost similar, I didn't realize until I had been writing the outline, which is the first of only couple of times that I've written an outline for a film. I actually realized this was kind of like the father-son Small Soldiers in Small Soldiers, that relationship, which Joe Dante always said was pretty much his Gremlins 3. But that was not intentional. That was just the way it was coming out. So you originally think that Billy and Kate are going on a trip to talk business in New York, and it's a few days before Halloween, because I thought it'd be cool to actually set this monster movie series in an actual Halloween setting. I thought it would be cool anyway. But where it would happen was, like, Randy's trying to prove that he can be responsible, take care of Gizmo, and ultimately locks him outside in the middle of the morning. So it's kind of like you kind of see, like, Gizmo almost gets killed almost immediately, and Billy just pretty much said, "No, I can't trust you." So he calls his mother to stay over for the weekend. We have a little bit of side talk for the fans, where, like, Billy and his mother talk about the death of his father, Ran from the original movie, and all that, and just, like, get that out of the way. And so Billy and Kate are gone, and while Randy's not having an issue with his grandmother, he's pretty much just moody as everything, just pretty much saying, I'm stuck here for the weekend and stuff like that. We get a little bit of him taking care of Gizmo, seeing, like, how they actually take care of Gizmo, like bathe him and stuff, because he can't touch water. It's like a little vacuum that they have to, like, pretty much just like dirt devil him over like that. He goes to answer the phone. Not the phone. He goes to answer the doorbell, and it's the girl he's interested in. Anna, I think, is her name in the script that I originally called her. I never really wrote this out, what she was doing. I kind of felt like she was protesting something in particular, whether it's like something environmental or something related to Halloween festivities or something like that. And she had a conversation with Randy. Gizmo's left alone in the bathroom, and Randy has left the sink going. So it's kind of like Gizmo's, like, in panic, where, like, he's on the sink and they're going to overflow, and he just, like, takes a diving leap off the counter and literally almost falls into the toilet. So, like, he's grabbing onto the seat and just, like, cliffhanger, just kind of like just barely, like, get hanging on the edge until he not falling into the water, and just like make a whole dramatic thing out of it, and he finally gets a good grip and gets back on top of the toilet seat rim. Thinks he's okay, thinks he's all right. He leans over and actually leans on a plunger, which tips him over. He's startled, somersaults, hits the shower knob, falls into the toilet, and as he's, like, just dazed and just kind of waking up, he hears the rumble, and the shower head suddenly flashes on, and all of a sudden you hear chee chee chee, like the Psycho theme, but it's, like, cutting in with Gizmo getting drenched by the shower head. And again, we go into, like, Randy trying to talk to Anna about like you want to go on a date or something like that, just like that fiddle faddle. And what it is, they don't commit, but they kind of say like I'll see you later and stuff like that. And then when he closes the door, uh, he hears the scream from upstairs, and he's like, "Oh crap!" And then it's him running up the stairs, and I want to say the grandmother is asleep in the living room. I don't remember what I had. He runs into the bathroom, turns off the sink, and then suddenly realizes that there are over like 100 mogwai in the bathtub, and it's kind of like, oh my, what the? And he is trying to figure out which one's Gizmo, and this probably would have been CGI because I don't think you could have like gotten that many little mogwais muppeted up. I don't know how if any director saw this he would have done it. But I love the idea of like there being like a massive mogwai kind of like tribute to Trouble with Tribbles in the original Star Trek series. But I find like the idea of all of these little fuzzy things like all over the floor more creepy than actually even the Gremlins. So Randy's trying to hide all this from his grandmother. He doesn't know what to do. He starts packing them in like extra suitcases that he can find around the house. Rather, suitcases, trunks, boxes, shoe boxes, and then just like electric taping the boxes down. And he like literally takes them all into the basement. Somehow getting it past his grandmother. They probably would have, oh, excuse me, had a conversation at some point. Days go by. The Mogwai get out of the trunk, and at one point, they grab Gizmo. And then there's a, almost like a rave down in the basement where, like, they have raided the fridge and just, like, taken everything they could. They're shoving Jell-O and whipped cream into Gizmo's mouth. And it's just like a horrifying, like, bullying, hazing moment. And then you turn over, and it says 12:15 a.m., and then you realize, oh crap, it's past midnight, and not only have the Mogwais eaten, Gizmo's eaten. So I kind of like get that terror that like, oh no, what's gonna happen to Gizmo and stuff like that, and which was always an idea. I always like thought that Gizmo needed to become a gremlin by the third movie. I always had the idea that he made friends with a gremlin when I was early thinking about this movie, but then I just decided, no, you need to switch it up and just like have Gizmo complete his cycle or whatever it is, become what he was eventually meant to become. And then the next day or 2 days, whenever it is, Anna comes back to Randy and they continue their conversation and set up a date pretty much at that point. But then all of a sudden he hears like a rumbling. And he hasn't checked on them in like a couple of days and just realized, oh crap. And then he goes downstairs and it's almost like walking into the alien queen's nest from the end of Aliens, where like you see all these pods and cocoons everywhere on the floor, and it's just like a creepy situation. There's thunder and lightning outside, so completing the atmosphere, and then and I said, what are these things and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, claw comes out of one of the cocoons, and then all of a sudden they all start like popping and things emerging, and just like everyone's creeped out, and Randy and Anna run up the stairs, lock the door, and then all of a sudden you start hearing the downpour, and then you realize, no, you hear all of a sudden a window smash, and then you start hearing the downpour outside, and then it's oh man, and they run upstairs and open the balcony to see an ocean of gremlins outside in the rain, and it's one of those things where like these are even more massive than like in Gremlins 2. So I'm like, okay, all that. After that, I really didn't have anything else. Earlier on, there was a little subplot where like this sexy nurse, and I originally like wrote in my notes Christy Romano, because that was the time where like anything I was writing a screenplay, I always said like I need to put her in this. She is such a underused actress. From the days of Even Stevens, she did a lot of Disney projects, but that was just it. And you see her coming to this house where there's an old man in an electric wheelchair, and you realize it's Mr. Futterman from the first two films. And you also realize that this hospice nurse is actually his niece. So he's now pretty much gone completely crazy now that his wife is gone. And just on that point, and when the massive gremlins come out, and then all of a sudden these gremlins are attacking the nurse as she's coming to Futterman's house. Futterman has already been loading up his wheelchair and stuff like that with automatics and AK-47s, where he got this just making fun that he's just ready for war. This old man in a wheelchair, which makes me not want to see this movie now that Dick Miller's gone. You just could not replace that, so it had to be completely taken out of the film. But yeah, then his niece becomes kind of like the Ellen Ripley type, and you see her like mowing down gremlins with like a machine gun at some point. And I didn't really write a lot of the chaos in that. I wrote like a few little ideas, but my favorite one was the gremlins getting to a Best Buy and they're watching TV, channel surfing. But then they come to Lilo and Stitch from Disney, and I think it was the scene where like Stitch was building the city, and like pretending to like mow down, save me, and stuff like that. And the gremlins were just like lockjawed, and then all of a sudden they go. Because as much as I love Lilo and Stitch, every time I hear Stitch's voice, I keep saying, like, he's ripping off the Gremlins. That's pretty much all that voice is. So that was that. Randy and Anna are trying to figure out what on earth they can do. And there was also, like, those little sites of, like, Gizmo Now a Gremlin, where, like, you see him in the empty basement, but you never see him. You just see his POV. And then all of a sudden you just see like a shadowy figure that is a mirror surface. You hear him scream in a gremlin, and stuff like that. And then you just see like him, all his POV, because I never intended for the audience to see him until Randy sees him. And he finds like one of those little go-karts that little kids have, taller kids have. It's not a go-kart, but it's like one of those little things. And then at a certain point, like Randy and Anna are about to get like mowed over by these gremlins that have pretty much just like gone feral and gone all creepy and everything like that. And you see like them getting run over by this go-kart, and then all of a sudden there's like there's a little machine gun on it. And I kind of loved I wrote down the idea. We hear the Mogwai theme song, but rocked out like that, like that sweet little tune has suddenly become like metal. It becomes like it's now almost like an Indiana Jones kind of theme. And then we see Gizmo as a gremlin, and I always wrote down in the description Gollum gremlin, because I always said like this is like a reluctant gremlin. This was not a gremlin that meant to become a gremlin, so it's always Gizmo fighting against this crazy side to just pretty much say, I have to help Randy, I have to help Billy, I have to help everybody from these gremlins and stuff like that. All the gremlins have to find a new place to stay when dawn comes, so they pretty much run into an abandoned mall, which is pretty much abandoned and pretty much has plenty of places to hide and everything like that for like a massive stuff of that. And the whole story is to like repeat the first film, blow up the mall. But I always kind of said this was also kind of like a eight-legged freaks kind of thing, where like all the townsfolk are like involved in this plan, not just Randy and Anna. So I thought that was a little different. It made like a more powerful impact. Then after everything's done, Gizmo comes home with Randy and Anna, and Grandma sees that Gizmo's now a gremlin, and just said, how are we going to explain this to your father and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden the main villain gremlin comes back, and I never really wrote out what he was going to be. I at one point thought of like giving him dreadlocks, and then I thought no, 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 that's not gonna really work. That's too Predator. Then I kind of had the idea of like making him like a almost like a little fuzzy hedgehog when he's a Mogwai with all the hair sticking up out of his back, and then like when he becomes a gremlin, it's like this very skinny creature that has like a big ball of spikes on his back. So I thought that was a little idealistic. The villain comes back. He attacks Randy first, and then all of a sudden Gizmo gets protective, and then it's just like this brawl between two gremlins all through the house. They run into like every living room, bathroom, everywhere. And at one point when Gizmo is pretty much almost mortally wounded, but then Anna slams the villain gremlin with a bat that slams him into the oven. Randy closes it up and turns the oven on, and then it's just like the microwave from the first film where it's just like and then all of a sudden you think he's finally dead. Then he like breaks out of the window of the stove door, and then he's just like and just flames everywhere, and he's just like gonna run and just rip at anything he does. Then all of a sudden he explodes in like a big blast of slime, and then you see Billy is now in the kitchen door with a shotgun, and it's just like he has killed the final gremlin. And then Randy just says, "Great," just like really see him and everything like that. But then you start hearing Gizmo moaning and that gremlin cry, and then Billy almost shoots him. Randy says, "No, no, don't shoot him," and stuff like that. And then it's just like that same fight with like father and son, and then it's sort of, "What are you doing?" and something like that. And all of a sudden you start hearing, and almost like that scene on E.T. where like E.T. is near death in like the bathroom, and he's just reaching out for Mom. And it's just, and it's just like this big-eyed gremlin just saying, "Please, please." And then Billy just realized, oh my gosh. And then just everything's settled. Now they get it. Now they get that Gizmo's a gremlin now. So afterwards we see like the whole town is starting to pick up and everything like that. News coverage is everywhere. And even most of the kids are like filming everything with their phones and stuff like that. Billy and Randy reconcile and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden we just hear Kate going, "Billy!" And then we turn back into the kitchen where like Gizmo is now bandaged up, but it's like he has pigged out on like everything on the kitchen table. There's a whole mess of food on there, and he's watching Three Stooges like bonk each other on the head, and it's just and then Billy just says, "Oh boy," and that ends the film. So that would have been my idea for Gremlins 3, but sadly, Dick Miller's no longer with us, and I just don't think people really have it in there for another funny horror comedy. Although I would love to like put like more scares into the next Gremlin film and stuff like that, but not lose that funny format. So yeah, that would have been my idea for Gremlins 3. So there you have it. And happy Halloween, everyone!